Former Public Protector Thuli Madonsela says she'd be surprised if the court ruling on the lockdown regulations survives the scrutiny of a higher court. She joins me now, and of course she's a professor in social justice at Stellenbosch University these days. Good evening, Professor. Thank you so very much. I want to read a little from an article that was published and written by you, published in the City Press Online, I think, today, and you quote The Little Prince, written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and the Little Prince is talking about the king, and the king said, "One must require of each what each is able to give. Authority rests first of all upon reason. I have a right to demand obedience because my orders are reasonable." Now, I know you have issues with the judgment, but first of all, for me, I have a broader question, and that is, was it actually important that the regulations be tested for reasonableness and rationality?
Absolutely. Thank you for the privilege, Sally. It was important that the regulations be tested in court, and the judge has done a great job. I would say, let me not be understood to be suggesting that this judgment is useless. It's a great judgment. It deals with extremely important issues that within the SCOPRA and social justice network have been raising, and his concerns about irrationality are pretty much similar to our concerns. The greatest problem with the judgment is that it gives us examples of what the judge considers to be irrational, but then impairs everything except for a few. It would have been best if the judgment had only specified which regulations are irrational and why. So that's the first problem with the judgment, which is a great judgment, great lessons for government, and I would advise that government should not just throw the baby with the bathwater, because even if it wins in a court of law, even if government wins in a court of law, it will not win in the court of public opinion, as I said in that article.
Yes, exactly. And I just want to quote something else from the article. You said that government must, quote, oppas, because you say that in the court of public opinion, the battle has been lost. Why is it so important, and I mean, I suppose we go back to the Little Prince story, to get the buy-in of someone like me, an average person in South Africa?
Because for the rule of law to survive, we need to have people governed by consent. If you're going to rule by decree, you're going to have a situation where pretty much most people ignore the rules. And therefore you're going to rely on the police and on the army, which exacerbates rather than solves the problem, because then people begin to resent government, as we did under apartheid. The answer lies in government not only doing the right thing, but being seen by the people to do the right thing. And government not only being seen to be helping, not only helping the people, but being seen to be helping the people and working with the people in formulating solutions.
And your article suggests, really, I mean, you make note of the fact that government has been under huge pressure to try and promulgate these regulations, and the President himself has said, look, we haven't got everything right. But you're suggesting as well that there's an opportunity now to perhaps make sure, and it's so crucial, that these regulations are reasonable, rational, and they're in line with the Constitution. You're saying that your concern with the judgment is that it would have been better if he'd been more specific. I want to ask from you, which regulations do you think require a really close eye to see if they are in fact rational? Which ones are you most concerned about?
Well, the judge specifies some of those that he doesn't think are very much rational. One is funerals. At the moment, South Africa has the most liberal approach when it comes to funerals, in that we are allowed up to 50 people. In other countries, nobody is allowed except 1 or 2 people, or maybe 6. So we're grateful that it's 50. However, the regulation, I think it's 35, if I'm not mistaken, requires that there are specific people that should be at the funeral. Assuming in your family you don't have any of those people, then nobody is going to be at your funeral. And it doesn't really make sense. But we do understand the rationale behind governments regulating is to make sure we don't have too many people, because too many people creates congestion and therefore opportunities for transmission. How about keeping the number at 50 but not deciding who attends the funeral, and getting the station commander in the place where the funeral is going to take place to give them 50 licenses to use? That's just one example. And then there's a question of food. The judge doesn't deal with it very exhaustively, but he does deal with the issue of people in the informal sector whose industries have been closed. And one of those sectors is the hairdressing industry. And it's true that it is one sector where there's a lot of close proximity, but it's a sector where many people make their living. And Sally, tell me, how many people have you seen who have new braids? Which suggests to me that people are ignoring the law anyway. So instead of, pushing a law that nobody obeys, why not set up standards that people have to comply with? I think going forward, government will have to rely more on pricking our consciences to do the right thing. I think the policing and control approach has been exhausted.
And I think it's so interesting that as a nation, there's been this natural sense of this doesn't feel right, this doesn't gel. And so crucial, as you say, that we actually go through this to get the buy-in. I'm just wondering what you think the next move should be. Now, obviously, government, as far as I know, at this point has not yet specifically responded on what their next move might be. There's some suggestions they should just go through all the regulations and fix them. But do you think perhaps this issue should go even to the Constitutional Court to really make sure that these regulations are correct? Because while we're not in lockdown level 4 and we might move out of 3, the reality is this virus is with us for a long time, and it's not inconceivable that we might go into deep and strict lockdown regulations when things get really bad.
That's true, and that's where again the judgment is a little bit ambivalent, in that the regulations are always there with us, which is level 1 to 5. And government has told us that as long as we have coronavirus, COVID-19, we can move between all of these levels. It's still conceivable that some community, some municipality can be taken back to 5. And I agree with you that this matter should go to the Constitutional Court. I do think that because of the way the judgment has been written, it is going to be lost. But I do think that government should not look at the technicalities in the way the judgment is written. It should look at the logic behind the judge's reasoning. And based on that, there are kernels of wisdom that will allow government to review the regulations, and some of them have been specified, the ones that need to be reviewed. The essence of these regulations, or the essence of the objection, is that government has posed the problem in a binary sense, that it is life and the economy. And that's what this judgment tells us was the argument from the Director General, and that's wrong. Even the World Health Organization says it's balancing between 4 things, not 2. It's health, the economy, social life, and human rights. And it's not about choosing between any of this. It's about striking a just and fair balance. And there's a lot of jurisprudence from the Constitutional Court and other courts that government can learn from about balancing different rights.
Professor Thuli Madonsela, thank you so much for your insights, your wisdom and your rational approach to this issue, making such an important point that this is a very important judgment. It may be slightly flawed, but it is something that needs to be addressed and looked into. Thank you for your time this evening. We do appreciate it.